Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the show where we sift through stacks of research, articles, and data to, well, really pull out the key insights and maybe those surprising connections that help make sense of complex topics.
And hopefully give you those aha moments along the way.
Exactly. Today, we're diving deep into Latvia. You know, when you picture Latvia, maybe you think of Riga in winter. Snow falling, crisp air, and the people, well, they often seem tall, fair, quite striking.
Yeah, that's a common first impression. Sort of. Nordic, right?
But then, if you actually look closer, that image starts to blur a little.
It really does.
Mhm.
Because mixed in with that Nordic look, you start noticing other things. Darker eyes pop out, maybe some olive skin tones, even curly hair sometimes.
And different facial structures, too, yeah. Like you might see cheekbones that feel more Slavic, or these really distinct Baltic eye shapes, or complexions that wouldn't be out of place in Central Europe.
Absolutely. It's quite a mix when you really pay attention.
Which makes you stop and ask, who are the Latvian people, really? Given this visible blend, it's hard to just stick one label on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically our mission for this deep dive. We want to explore Latvia as this unique crossroads. You can almost feel the history, the genetics, the appearance reflecting centuries of movement. We're peeling back the layers.
It's a fascinating place for exactly that reason. It's definitely not a genetic monoculture.
Right. So what's the big picture there, genetically speaking?
Well, its location is key. It's right there at a historical crossroads. You've got the Baltic Sea to the west, Russia looming to the east, Central Europe just south.
So a magnet for different peoples.
Exactly. Over thousands of years, it's just absorbed waves of different groups. Finno-Ugric peoples, Slavs, Germanic tribes, Scandinavians. It's like this constant weaving and reweaving of a genetic tapestry.
And this isn't just ancient history we're talking about, is it? I mean, the research shows it's literally in their DNA today. There was a big study in Nature back in 2019.
That was a huge one, yeah. It basically showed that modern Latvians descend from at least 4 major ancestral groups. Really deep roots.
Okay, can you break those down for us? What are these ancient layers?
Sure. So first you have the Mesolithic hunter-gatherers, the original inhabitants, way back. Then Neolithic farmers arise, coming up from Anatolia, bringing agriculture.
Okay.
After that, you get the Bronze Age steppe herders, like the Yamnaya culture, who moved across huge areas. And then layered on top of that, you have the more recent arrivals, Slavic and Germanic groups.
Wow. So hunter-gatherers, farmers, steppe nomads, and more recent Europeans. That's quite a cocktail, as the study put it.
It really is. And they emphasize that this mix isn't just detectable in labs. You can kind of see echoes of it on people's faces. The key thing isn't just that there's mixing, but the sheer extent of it, how these ancient lines came together in this region.
Okay, so let's get more specific. I saw some data, I think from the Estonian Biobank, about specific genetic markers, haplogroups.
Right, haplogroups. Think of them as major branches on the human family tree, tracing paternal or maternal lineage way back. And in Latvia, 2 are really prominent.
Which ones?
So first you have the R1a haplogroup. Almost 42% of Latvian men carry this. It's very common across Eastern Europe and among Indo-European speakers, especially associated with Slavic populations.
Yeah, 42%, that's huge.
It is. But then, get this. Another 35% carry the N1C1 haplogroup. Now, this one is strongly linked to Finno-Ugric roots. You see it a lot in Finns and Estonians.
So nearly 3/4 of the population belong to just these 2 major, quite different ancient lineages.
Pretty much. R1a pointing east and south, N1C1 pointing north. It really speaks volumes about centuries of deep, deep intermingling right there in Latvia.
That combination tells such a powerful story of being a meeting point.
Exactly. And it ties into this idea of genetic diversity. Some research from 2020 found Latvians actually have some of the highest genetic diversity in the Baltics. Maybe slightly more than Estonians, a bit less than Lithuanians.
But diversity here doesn't just mean new people arrived recently, right? It's more about...
It's about layers. Deep historical layers. It's the result of that long, long history of different groups settling and mixing over millennia. That's what creates the richness in the gene pool.
This genetic layering is really something. A hidden history written in our cells. But okay, let's bring it back to the surface. What about that Baltic look? The tall, blonde, blue-eyed image? How does that square with all this complexity? Is it real or just a myth?
Well, it's definitely not just a myth. There's some solid truth behind parts of it.
Okay.
Take hair color. Latvia consistently ranks among the top 5 countries globally for natural blondes. Some surveys, like from Riga's Stratton's University, suggest around 60 to 65% of Latvians have light hair blonde or light brown.
60 to 65%, that's a lot. Definitely supports the blonde part of the stereotype.
It does. And then eye color. A big meta-analysis in 2022 looked at pigmentation studies.
Yeah.
It found about 78% of Latvians have blue or gray eyes. 78%.
Wow. That's even higher than somewhere like Poland you mentioned.
Yeah, surprisingly higher than in neighboring Poland. So
Yeah.
blue eyes, light hair, those parts of the common image, they're definitely based on a visible reality for a large chunk of the population.
Okay, so the stereotype has legs, but there's always a but, isn't there?
There usually is. Because that's only one part of the picture, right? It's just one layer.
Yeah.
You also find plenty of people with really striking hazel and green eyes. They're quite common too.
And skin tones, does that vary as well?
Absolutely. You see more olive and warmer beige skin tones, especially as you move towards the southeastern regions like Latgale.
And that connects back to ancestry again, presumably.
Directly. Latgale historically has had higher Slavic and Jewish ancestry, and that contributes to different pigmentation patterns showing up more in there, maybe darker hair, warmer skin.
And what about the coast? All that Baltic Sea trade over the centuries.
Good point. Coastal towns were hubs. Think about places like Riga or Ventspils. They saw centuries of trade with Hanseatic League cities, with the Dutch, Swedes, Germans, even folks from as far as Genoa, apparently. All that interaction brought in different DNA, adding more subtle variations to facial features, nose shapes, eye spacing, that kind of thing.
So it's not just north versus east-south, it's also coastal versus inland influences layered on top.
Exactly. So yeah, while you definitely see that Norse god fair look, the reality spans all the way to what you might describe as Mediterranean warm. It's a whole spectrum.
Which means if you were trying to pick out the Latvian look in a crowd.
You'd probably be constantly surprised. The variation itself is maybe the most Latvian thing.
Okay, so it's clear this genetic story is about constant contact, being a hub. But it wasn't just traders and peaceful migrants, was it? History involved conflict, invasion. Did those leave a mark too?
Oh, absolutely. History wasn't always gentle. You have groups like the Teutonic Knights rolling through in the Middle Ages. They weren't just building castles. Their Germanic roots left a genetic imprint, influencing things like height and build in some areas.
And others followed, right.
Definitely. You had periods of Swedish administration, Polish armies marching across the land, centuries of Russian influence and settlement, significant Jewish communities establishing themselves as merchants and scholars, and then, much more recently, the impact of Soviet soldiers and settlers. Each wave, whether through conquest, administration, trade, or forced settlement, added new threads.
And you can almost map this geographically, can't you? Like little regional genetic snapshots?
To some extent, yes. Take Daugavpilys, down in the southeast, near Belarus and Lithuania. Genetic studies there show higher frequencies of haplogroups common in Belarus and Ukraine. It reflects those centuries of close contact with Eastern Slavic neighbors.
Okay, and what about other regions, say Western Latvia?
Well, if you look towards Vidzeme in the center or Kuzim out west, you often see features that align more with those Scandinavian and Germanic influences we talked about. Maybe higher cheekbones, narrower noses, generally lighter complexions. It shows how localized history shaped appearances differently across the country.
But there's a darker side to this recent history too, isn't there? The 20th century was brutal for Latvia.
Incredibly so. Historians really stress this point. The trauma of World War II and the subsequent Soviet era reshaped the population profoundly. We're talking about nearly a third of Latvia's pre-war population being lost, killed, deported to Siberia, or fleeing as refugees.
A third? That's almost unimaginable. A demographic catastrophe.
It truly was. And crucially, that huge loss, that vacuum, wasn't just left empty. The Soviet Union then encouraged, or rather orchestrated, mass settlement into Latvia from other Soviet republics.
Mostly Russians.
Primarily Russians, but also significant numbers of Belarusians and Ukrainians. This drastically shifted the ethnic balance. By 1989, ethnic Latvians were barely a majority in their own country, only about 52%.
52%? Wow. Has that recovered?
It has somewhat. Today, ethnic Latvians make up around 62% of the population. But the genetic and, well, the visual imprint of that massive demographic upheaval is still very much present. You can't understand modern Latvian diversity without understanding that 20th century history.
So beneath what might look like a fairly cohesive nation now, there are these deeper genetic fault lines, these sub-regional differences linked to all this history.
Precisely. And they're not just theoretical. Studies can actually detect them.
Like that 2021 population structure study, what did that find?
Yeah, that was interesting. It showed Genetically, people from Western Latvia, Kurzeme, clustered more closely with Swedes and also Lithuanians.
Hmm.
But people from Eastern Latvia, the Latgalians, they clustered more closely with Russians and Belarusians.
Directly reflecting those different historical connections and borders.
Exactly. And it even lines up with some physical observations. Anthropometric data measurements of physical traits sometimes show Latgalians, on average, might be slightly shorter, have broader facial structures, and a slightly higher rate of brown eyes and darker hair, aligning with those Eastern Slavic genetic links.
It's amazing how the genetics and the physical characteristics can mirror each other like that, reflecting deep history.
It really is. And then, of course, you have Riga,
The capital, the melting pot.
pretty much the ultimate melting pot in Latvia. Given its history as a major port city, centuries of migration, plus all the Soviet-era mixing concentrated there, it's no surprise it shows the most diversity. Some geneticists have even called it potentially Latvia's most pan-European city, genetically speaking.
Okay, this is a huge amount to take in. From ancient hunter-gatherers to Riga's modern mix. How do Latvians themselves grapple with all this? Does this diversity lead to discussions, maybe even tensions, about what it means to look Latvian today?
That's where it gets really contemporary and, yeah, sometimes complicated. Our sources suggest there are definitely conversations happening. Some Latvians really push back against the whole idea of a single Latvian look.
Saying identity is more about language and culture.
Exactly. That what binds them together is shared heritage, the Latvian language, traditions, not necessarily physical appearance.
And what about that tall, blonde stereotype we talked about?
Well, others argue that specific image, the sort of tall, blonde, often silent figure, is actually a kind of romanticized, possibly even Soviet-era archetype that doesn't really reflect the complex reality we've been discussing. It's seen as outdated by some.
But do biases still exist based on appearance?
Social scientists point out that unfortunately, yes, subtle biases can persist. You might see lighter features, slightly more privileged or centered in media or politics perhaps, and sometimes darker features might implicitly be viewed as less native or more foreign, even within Latvia.
A difficult dynamic.
It is. And it's a tension you see in many post-Soviet countries. Really, nations grappling with diverse populations and histories while forging modern identities. It's a tricky conversation.
But amidst all this variation and potential tension, is there something that unifies?
I think what comes through strongly, maybe unexpectedly, is resilience. Several sources hinted at this. The very genetic variation that makes Latvians look so different might also be part of what helped the population as a whole endure centuries of occupation, displacement, war, and then revival. Adaptability might be encoded alongside the diversity.
That's a powerful thought. Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. Why do Latvia's people look so different? What's the takeaway?
Well, as we've seen, it's not one simple answer, is it? It's the accumulation. It's all those migrations across millennia. It's the intermarriages. It's the wars that reshaped borders and populations. It's the trade routes that connected them to far-off places.
It's the different lives lived on farms, deep in the forests, in the port cities.
Right. It's ancient ancestry bumping up against very modern mobility. It's like you can feel the silent pull of DNA across huge stretches of time and space.
And maybe the most important takeaway is that difference isn't the anomaly in Latvia.
It's the norm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that feels right. The diversity is the identity, in a way.
So the faces you might see walking around Riga or anywhere in Latvia, they're not just Latvian in one narrow sense.
No. They're Baltic, they're Slavic, they're Nordic, they carry Jewish heritage, Germanic threads, Finno-Ugric echoes, all woven together. It's the past and the future meeting in the present.
A really complex and beautiful tapestry. It definitely leaves you thinking. What surprised you the most hearing all this? Or what does this kind of layered identity mean for how we think about nations today? Something to ponder.